Welcome to another exciting and elucidating episode of the Omni Talk Spotlight series. I'm your host, Anne Mezzenga.
And I'm Chris Walton.
And we are the founders of Omni Talk, the fast-growing retail blog that is all about the companies, the technologies, and the people that are coming together to shape the future of retail. Or, Chris, as we like to say, the blog that focuses on tomorrow's companies and tomorrow's trends today.
Yes, we do, Anne.
Chris, we have a fun guest today.
Yeah, we do.
Everybody,
one of my faves.
Yeah, everybody that's listening and watching live. We are going to talk about smart data capture and specifically how that will provide retailers with better inventory visibility, which has been quite the hot topic on the Fast Five as of late.
Quite is an understatement, I would say, actually. Yes, this continues to come up all the time with me.
Yes. Something that we believe in, one of the foundational elements of getting your retail house in order.
Yes.
So to do that, we are going to call back our old friend, Scandit VP of Product, Chief Technology Officer, and co-founder of Scandit, Christian Floerkemeier. Christian, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you.
Yeah, this is your second time on the show,
Second
right,
time?
Anne? Yeah,
Yeah.
second time. I've interviewed you before for something else. So I think this is like our third time
I know.
having an exchange with you.
Yeah.
And we're gonna go in a new place here on this
Yeah.
conversation.
I love when Christian is on the show because last time he was on, he compared one of the like archaic zebra scanners to a Lada broken down car and like, why are you going to hand? It's so funny. And that's like one of my favorite quotes from the last interview, Christian. So you better be bringing it today.
Ooh, that's a lot of pressure.
I have faith in you. You can do it. I just want to give a quick reminder to those who are watching us live on LinkedIn right now. Please go ahead. We have Christian and the Scandit team here answering your questions live in the chat right to the right of the video. So go ahead and pop those in throughout our conversation with Christian today. And with that,
all right, yeah, Christian. So I get to start you off here. Now, like we mentioned, we've had you on the show before. I've interviewed you before as well. But before we dive into smart data capture and all that entails, why don't you tell the folks a little bit first about who Scandit is and how your teams help retailers basically get better inventory visibility?
We started off really trying to bring data capture to general purpose devices, smartphones, right? Who had an attractive TCO, who had great usability, great economics. But in the early days, there were a lot of doubts around, can you actually scan reliably and swiftly and robustly with camera-based scanning on a smartphone? So we at Scandit, we spent a lot of time on actually machine vision, computer vision, and we didn't just from a marketing perspective said we're doing machine learning. We actually had to do it to actually get to the same swiftness and robustness that people with store associates are just used to from the specialist devices that were and are still in some way commonplace, right? And that's where we started off, and then we noticed like this is it's great to scan barcodes really quickly, but there's much more to efficiency and convenience for store associates, for consumer, than just scanning barcodes quickly, right? There is, when you look at how price label audits are done, it's a very tedious process for store associates.
To be putting it mildly.
Yeah, to put that mildly. Yes. Exactly. Right? Understatement of the year.
Exactly, right? So it's a very tedious, it's a costly process. It's an error-prone process. So why not do this different? The same when you start looking at counting, right, or receiving, right? It's great that it's that barcode scanning on a one-by-one basis can be done super swiftly. If you need to go and scan in 100 packages, it doesn't really matter that every scan is super quick. If you still need to move from box to box, and then after you scan 100 items, the list tells you, hey, there's 2 missing, and you start the entire process all over again because you now don't remember you did get interrupted at some point. Now, Did you start off at the right one or did you miss one, right? So in that sense, we felt like there was really this notion of smart data capture where with leveraging the power of the camera, leveraging the power of today's computer vision algorithms, we could really sort of give store associates and consumers superpowers, right? Mm-hmm. And that would really, from the early days of Scandit, it was really just about being as swift and as robust as the typical single scanning devices that we were seeing. We really sort of in the last couple of years really now took this to a very different level, where we really start looking at let's make data capture smart, right? Like, let's not just be swift and on individual barcodes, but let's bring in text recognition to it. Let's bring object recognition to it to really help the store associates and the compute and the consumer as well to make tedious processes more convenient, to bridge that gap between the physical and the virtual world in a much better way.
I think it's a good level set to start the conversation, which is, just to recap, and like basic company whose heritage is rooted in really quick, reliable barcode scanning through the simplicity of a mobile phone, an iPhone, or whatever mobile device you want. But now moving into the next realm in terms of how do you take what they've learned through that and use it to leverage it through further improvements in operations throughout an entire retail operation. I think that's an important level set here. And that's a topic we're going to spend most of our time on.
Yeah, absolutely. And Christian, I'm curious what you've been hearing from retailers. I mean, you're working with so many different types of retailers, but let's especially focus on like grocery retailers, mass merchants. What are some of the reasons that they are so hot on smart data capture right now?
I mean, one of the things that we're seeing is actually inflation, right? Like in general, I think for all of us, inflation is not a great thing, but for the grocery retailers, actually all the kind of retailers that you mentioned just now, inflation poses a real big issue when it comes to updating prices. There was always the trend, and that has been accelerated about dynamic pricing, which meant that store associates would need to go into the store and update prices on a regular basis. What we've heard from retailers in the last couple of months, this just has been going through the roof, right? Where prices need to be updated even more and more frequently as we're seeing inflation, as we're seeing goods getting more expensive, all the supply chain issues that I think we were all aware of. That basically means that prices need to be updated even more, right? That's one thing we're seeing. I think we're also seeing it depends a little bit retailer by retailer. It's not the same for every retailer, but being very mindful about the kind of tasks that they're asking the store associates to do.
Right.
Because they're all struggling to go on or like a large majority of them, finding store associates and keeping them, right? So it's really important that like not just how much does it cost to do a certain task from a pure manual cost, but also can I make this as easy as possible? So, my store associate doesn't at the end of the day think like, this job actually isn't that much fun, and starts looking for alternative, right? The third one that sort of plays into some of this, visibility, shelf management that I think you guys mentioned early on is actually something we've seen in COVID, right? Is that we've seen in-store order fulfillment, now whether this is for BOPIS, for click and collect, etc., really been going through the roof. And we've seen two things there. One is that efficiency is really key, right? Like when you look at, and it's all the things that do impact efficiency when you pick in the store, right? Like you think it's in that spot, but it's actually not there. So now start looking in the store where that product actually is, because your product locations in the store are not correct.
Right.
Is a major driver of efficiency and customer satisfaction, right? Because if you can't find it, then you're going to spend a minute looking for it. That brings your average pick time up significantly. We had retailers tell us every second that they save on average pick time is in the millions. So if not knowing where things are actually in the store has a major impact on that time. And then the other one, of course, is the customer satisfaction, right? Because if then the store associate or the picker can't find it and says like, hey, this is not here, and you need to substitute, or you have you can't fulfill the order, the customer is not happy, right? So accurate product location in BOPIS time is something that we've really seen, or in click and collect times, is something we've seen as a major trend. And then related to this is that depends a little bit on the kind of business you're in, but it's really real-time inventory accuracy. Right. We've seen the number of cycle counts going up significantly. And again, that's cost driven, and again, something that is actually not that much fun for the store associates.
Nope.
Right? Like doing this online. So all these things sort of come together, right?
Yep.
But you need to go and do it, because otherwise, if you don't know what's on the shelves at that point, then when the customer is actually ordering, you can't go and tell them that that's out of stock right now. You think it's there, and then you can't fulfill the order, and it impacts customer satisfaction. So you end up in that somehow that vicious cycle where, in some way, many of the tasks actually require a lot of. If you do it in a conventional way, you need to go and do it in a very tedious way, time-consuming, costly way, and we've seen that retailers are really looking at how can I do it in a more cost-efficient way, but how can I also go and do it to address my customer satisfaction challenges.
Yeah. And I would say too, we're all in on this idea in general, like the idea you're alluding to, which is using computer vision to help simplify these processes, make the customer experience that much better, and to make sure that everything's happening the way you want to day in and day out, especially as you start talking about the things that you mentioned at the outset of that conversation in terms of pricing. But Christian, I think we've also seen, and we've covered a lot on our show lately, like there's various approaches to this. You've got people putting drones in stores. You've got robotics that are heating up to this dimension as well. Like, what's the approach that you at Scandit are espousing now in regards to how people should think about operationalizing this across those, 4 or 5 dimensions you just discussed with us?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing, as you said, is we're seeing sort of, many, it almost depends on a per use case basis. What does it? Okay. Right. And it also depends on where you are sort of from a maybe maturity world, but like how many resources are you willing to throw at it, to put it this way? Right?
Yeah. Tell us more.
And we for example seen that we've seen some retailers who are saying, look, I'm today running price and promotion audits. Okay. I know they're not happening very often. They're happening only for a very small part of my SKUs. And in the times of high inflation and my merchandising teams, running more and more, dynamic pricing activities, I'm running into major issues now. I cannot guarantee that my prices are actually updated, which impacts me in a number of different ways. It impacts me with lost sales because my promotion campaigns are not executing as well as they could, right? Because the stickers are just not being put up, right? Not put up. This next one is what happens, and that's something that we keep hearing is and we didn't actually think, we didn't have this high on the radar when we sort of launched with this product, was what actually happens if someone, the prices are wrong at the shelf. Yep. So you put your item into your shopping cart, and then you go to the point of sale system. At the point of sale system, it shows a different price. So what happens now? At that moment, the customer is first of all annoyed because he says like, "Hey, no, this is the wrong price." But now the point at the store associate at the point of sale system now needs to get up and actually go and check what is actually happening. What is the actual price label? Is this actually correct? Just think about this. At that moment, someone needs to go and check this, right? Manually, right? So not only is the customer satisfaction is really not great at this point, or the customer experience, but it's actually real productivity loss, right? Right. And we've seen sort of this using a smartphone, in that sense, or any mobile device, so to speak, any mobile device that has a camera. To just point at the shelf, and rather than the conventional way, right? You point the barcode scanner at the shelf label, you scan the shelf label, then it shows you the price is supposed to be this. Then you look at it again yourself. It probably takes you 4 or 5 seconds per label, and you're doing that per label for 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 SKUs, right? Like you can see how this just doesn't work very well, right? As opposed to holding up the phone. Depends a little bit on the label settings of the different customers. Is we seeing at least a 10x improvement where you either still doing it one by one, but with AR it's super rapid where we scan the barcode, we scan the price label with text recognition, object recognition. We detect is it actually what it says in the database, and so it's a check that takes a second or less. If we're applying what we're calling our matrix scan technology to it, you can actually do tens of labels at the same time. So you can just take a step back, point at the shelf, and it does the entire shelf for you. So we're seeing, coming back to your original question, we're seeing customers who are saying right now, price labels is my biggest challenge right now. It's a process that's really inefficient. This really helps me going. And it's something I already have. My store sales already know how to do this. So I'm not introducing a new process, which is, introducing new processes is always a challenge, right? So I already have this process. I just make an existing process 10x better. and I can roll this out fairly quickly. The devices are in the stores. It's running on pretty, any Android, iOS device, you can go and run this. That just needs to go and have a camera. And that's something we've seen with some folks. We've also seen that sort of at the other end, where folks are already like, retailers are saying, okay, I know I have a problem. I know my tools aren't great. I want something. I actually would rather take this out of the hands of the store associates. I want the store associates just focused on fixing things where I do need the manual approach. And I'm going to use, use robotic equipment that allow me to do this autonomously. Now, what we've also seen in that context is that deploying robots is difficult, right? It's yet another piece of hardware that needs to be managed, right? And that comes with cost, that comes with training, that comes with all sorts of complexities. And so what we've done is we teamed up with Brain, who've been making the scrubbers autonomous in retail stores. So you're leveraging the same kind of infrastructure that's already there. And that's a little bit, I think, our sort of approach at Scandit, where we're saying we're taking the mobile devices that in the stores, and you can run, price and promotion execution, for example, just on a mobile device that's already there. You can also go on if you want to operate at a higher cadence, at a higher frequency, at lower manual cost, you can operate autonomously, but you don't need to go and deploy new hardware. You can actually use your scrubbers that you have typically anyway, because they're driving through your stores to clean the floors, and you put a camera tower on them. They observe your shelves. They can do the price checks. They can also check where things are. And we've been taking the approaches like whatever is like most suitable to a business, we can go and support this, right? At fairly manageable and accessible infrastructure costs.
So, basically what you're saying there is you're saying, look, price inflation is happening. The manufacturers are probably passing on costs to the retailers every single day at a rapid rate, more quickly than they ever have before. And the price labels aren't getting adjusted on shelves.
And customers are checking more frequently.
Yeah. And so, and then the customers, that's going to end up happening. What's going to end up happening is customers are going to go to the till. They're going to get the wrong price. It's going to cause this big kerfuffle at the check lane. The employee is going to go back, check out the price, find out that they're right. You're losing the margin on that. And then to your point as well, you're not getting the benefit of the promotions because you're not getting the discounting off of that new higher rate than you would previously. So that's an issue I think probably all retailers are grappling with right now. So in your mind, like as you broke out those options where you could go with, the employee device, which I want to make sure people understand too, you're not talking, you're talking about like just literally holding your phone up to a 24-foot section of product all through the viewfinder and being able to easily see what prices are right and what prices are wrong.
Yep.
And you're saying that there are pros and cons to taking the approach with a mobile phone, potentially affixing that same technology to a floor scrubber that's autonomously going through the aisles, or maybe one that's not even going autonomously through the aisles. Maybe that's just going through on a regular schedule. As retailers think about this, what are the pros and cons in your mind? Like, what is there any approach you would advocate, more resolutely relative to another, or, how should they think about that?
I guess the answer is really, it depends, right? It depends on how big is your average store size, right? So if you're operating, a sort of more at the smaller store footprint size, then the mobile technology just has tremendous benefits, right?
Right. Makes sense.
You're unlikely to want to have a scrubber in there in the first place, to be honest, right?
Right.
And in that case, the mobile technology in that sense is very suitable for that approach. It also comes with like, what sort of cadence are you like trying to run this at that sense, right?
Right.
When you're running price and promotion execution, yes, we like with the technology we provide, we can be 10x faster than sort of and much more convenient to the user, but it's still a manual task at that point, right? So you're not going to be running but a price audit label check, you probably don't want to go and run this every 5 hours on every SKU that you have in your store. You want to change prices labels often, but not that often, right? So in that sense, for price and promotion label execution, we generally do think that the mobile approach, especially for the I'd say small, medium size store formats, is the idea, a very good approach. And then as you start getting to much larger store formats, and you also want to start, incorporating additional capabilities around, where things are on that larger store, store floor plan footprint, and the autonomous solutions have a lot of benefits, right?
Okay, so got it. So you're saying there then that there's additional use cases here that we haven't talked about, that you talked about in the beginning, but if you start looking at item locations, item accuracy, pallet locations, then you might look at one of those approaches versus another. Say more about that.
Yeah, exactly. I think you can go and say like the second, you start, really looking at very large footprints, and where you have the scrubbers, that gives you easier scale, but it comes with I'd say probably with a bit more complexity in the sense, right? Like now it's whereas on the mobile side of things, it's basically, we provide either an app, or we provide a solution that integrates into your existing store associate app that you already have, right? So it's with a backend that handles all of the computer vision and needs. So it's very easy to go and deploy. An autonomous solution with a robot, while you can leverage the scrubbers to instruct the routines to make sure that they run on a regular basis, that requires, to be frank, a bit more overhead in a sense. So what we're typically seeing is that retailers sort of start with the mobile solutions.
Right.
They get a good sense of, hey, is that actually really driving value for me?
Right.
And then at the end of the day, you see that even from the mobile solutions, right? And then you can start saying, well, actually see value. I actually want to do it even more often. I have the capacity to actually drive change, right? Because one thing that is I think that we always saying is I love talking about visibility, but at the end of the day, if you can't take action on it, right?
Right.
And if life doesn't get easier for the store associate for any of these solutions, right? And where with the data that you capture, you make the life of the store associates easier, it is very difficult to succeed. Yes, you might have, in any case, you might have more transparency about, how often are prices updated. But if there's not something to the store associate that makes the store associate's life easier, many of these solutions in the longer term will not succeed.
So the question you're getting me thinking about now is, as people, as you said, like retailers generally start with the mobile solutions first. Are they typically starting with the pricing application first over the inventory visibility side of that? And the reason I'm asking that, Christian, I'm curious your thoughts on it is, inventory is something that you have to routinely do a certain way all the time. So, it almost feels like, and I could be wrong here, but it almost feels like it lends itself more to like a standard process, say attached to an autonomous robot, let's say, versus an employee who could be doing it differently each time. Am I thinking about that the right way? Is there any words of wisdom you would have for retailers on anything I just discussed there?
I think one interesting aspect is if I'm doing the price and promotion, I get some of the other capabilities, I can start tagging them on at a later stage, right? Like I always
so that's what you advocate, yeah.
Right? And I think this is something that at Scandit, we're very engineering driven, right? You overestimate how easy, things are always much more difficult than you think.
Right.
And so it's really good to be very modular about things. So let's not try to do 10 things at the same time. Let's do one and then take it in steps. And I think this is also what we're advocating. Let's go and start, let's say, with price and promotion execution, a big issue right now. Once you've got that deployed and you start taking these images for price and promotion execution, then as a next step, you can start saying, well, actually, that's great. I actually, see all these labels. Labels are correct. Let me actually also go and visit, validate that the items are in the right spot. So our sort of guidance is, let's take this step by step. We're seeing, price and promotion is a real big issue these days. Let's focus on this. Let's leverage the existing processes that store associates are used to, right? From because they're doing this today in a slightly inefficient way. And then from there on, start taking additional capabilities on top of, because at the end of the day, just that you capture, for example, that the price is wrong or the product is in the right spot, that's actually not that important, right? What's really important is that you have the process in place that you're going to go and fix this.
Yeah, this has been so great. I mean, I used to say, and we've talked about this on the show before. I've talked about exactly like, with regards to pricing, what you're saying, like, yeah, if you have to have a process to fixing it, but at the end of the day, getting a price right on an item in the store is probably the single most important thing a store employee can do to drive sales on a given day. Like you put a promotion sign on on something, the sales are going to go up at least 20% just from doing that. So every one of those that's absent is important. And I don't think retailers realize that enough, which is why it's great to call this out, which is this is a great place to start with this technology because it will have an immediate impact.
People just don't know how inaccurate the prices are, because how would you, right?
No, you don't.
You don't run the audits, right? So it's, we've done audits and we're like, no, this can't be. No, you have the wrong price file.
Right.
This is not correct, right? And we're like, no, this is what it is. This is what you gave us. This is correct, right? And so I think in that sense is we're seeing that sort of right now as in that sense as a starting point. And it's I think there was like a a famous, I think it was an Austrian economist from the University of Chicago. I think he said, like, you can't manage what you can't measure, right? And that's so true.
Right.
So.
Well, Christian, you were saying something earlier there about, taking the approach of what is the first thing that I'm going to try to figure out? And that's pricing and promotions here with this technology. Yeah. But I want to go back to something you said too about the devices that you're using, how you're going to start that. And you mentioned that it makes sense for a lot of retailers and grocers who are probably listening to this conversation, to start with the mobile devices. Because, while autonomous data capture is exciting, the robots putting cameras on there, like you said, it's a little bit more difficult to execute, can be more costly to kick off. But tell us a little bit about how Scandit's able to kind of be deployed on the devices that the employees already have. You're making lives simpler for them. You're making these employees have superpowers. Talk to us a little bit about the approaches that some of your partners have seen by just putting it on the employee devices themselves.
Yeah, so our shelf view product for mobile devices basically comes there's a cloud backend to it, which provides you state that runs some of the computer vision capabilities. Some of it's actually on the devices itself. We provide our technology in as an SDK that can be embedded into an existing store associate app. We also have an app to do some of this, but we've just seen that the tier 1, tier 2, and even tier 3 retailers typically have their own app that they have custom. It's got all their business logic. They typically don't want now to have a separate app for this, right? So our technology in that sense, as a library or as a component, slots into the existing store associates app for example, for the price checks. And then our technology in that sense receives, processes the SKU files with the prices. And the entire workflow from augmented reality is actually happening on the phone in the store associate app, but within our component that we provide. So what that means is the overall capability, the workflow is something that we provide. It can be customized, it can be configured, but it can be deployed fairly quickly. So in the sense, we already implement all like best practice around UX. We've done a lot of user testing on how to really make this easy for the store associates. And then really the point that is in that sense custom is how do you then execute on actually fixing the labels, right? We see some customers of ours, they have mobile printers. And then, at that point, they just, print to the mobile printer and update the label. In other settings, this is done, still in a sort of backroom place, or even at the point of sale register, where then the application sends the price labels that need to be updated, for example, to those settings. Then you go back, grab them, you update them, you do another check on them, and then you have, in the system that we provide, you get all the analytics about, how are the different stores, how, are the promotion campaigns being executed? Are there certain stores that perform better than others? All of this actually comes through our APIs and analytics dashboards.
Hold on a sec. So your system will actually help them track their performance as well against the discrepancies that they're finding on shelf, like the next day, how many of those got fixed, et cetera, et cetera. Wow, that's pretty sweet.
Honestly, I mean, what we're seeing is like, a lot of retailers have very sophisticated analytics systems, right? So in that sense, we provide also in that sense the raw data on what was updated at what time and what we measured through an API, and it can be integrated into the existing analytics tools that retailers have deployed. But we're also seeing if you want to go and see where you're at in some way, you don't want to go on, can you put, then of course, retailers have, savvy IT teams to go and do it.
Mm-hmm.
But to kind of see, is there actually, where are our pain points? What are really the problems? Having, in that sense, an out-of-the-box solution that you can literally, put down, you're seeing what the performance is, you can run a pilot. We've seen that that's pretty key for people to evaluate technology and see whether it actually makes business sense for them, right?
Yeah, and it sounds like it works a lot of ways. Like you could just do mobile printers in aisle, or you could do a batch process at specific times of the day too, and then get those analytics. That's pretty slick. I got to tell you, as a store manager, I would have.
The associates do look like they have superpowers too. They are holding the phone up. I've seen the demos. Like they hold the phone up, it scans, and all of a sudden they like see on the screen X-ray vision, and then they have the belt printer. I mean, Christian's got them set up so that they actually look. All that they need is like a little mask to be wearing.
They need a cowboy hat as they're doing this, walking down the aisle.
And honestly, like we had one of our customers, right? They measured how many steps a store associate takes, right?
Right.
And that's close to 20,000 steps a day. Now,
for sure.
Like us, I mean, we typically work at at desks, right? But at NIF, we sort of complain about like walking around a lot. If you need to go and work 20,000 steps every day, because for everything that you need to go and print, you need to go and look something up on or anything you want to go and check, you need to go and check it on a PC in the back room. And then for every label that you print, you need to go and walk back there as well. It is pretty tedious, right? So
yeah, I mean, I used to say working in a store end is like moving your house every day.
Yeah, like
it's just the taxing, the toll it takes on you. It's just a taxing effort, All right, well, so net, if there's grocery, I mean, it seems like we've been talking a lot about groceries specifically, because I think that's probably where the inflation, is the heaviest. And also, everyone in the retail industry is grappling with the retail labor shortage as well. So what parting words would you have here, Christian, in terms of, any grocers that's thinking about what we've talked about? What last words would you have for them as they're trying to contemplate what to do here?
I mean, what we always go and say is really think about the store associate. We always think that it's absolutely key, because no matter what technology you go and deploy, if it doesn't really create a benefit for them in their daily routines, you are not going to see the uptick in adoption that I think all of this depends on, right? Whether you're doing autonomous scanning, whether you're doing this with mobile device, it really almost doesn't make a difference, but it needs to actually, ideally, it doesn't introduce a new process for them, or and it just makes an existing one more efficient. And we consider that one of the key points, right? And then the other part is really around the start focused, start with something that in that sense, not 5, 6, 7 different things. We see this sometimes. Can you look at locations, right? And all these things, right? And like be focused on executing one, get that right, see some improvements, and then move that to set it to the next stage.
Makes sense. Yeah, I like that too. Like, yeah, if you actually, that's a really good way to think about it. Like, if you think about this in terms of how can you make the employees' lives better, simpler, and actually make them happier too, is an element I would add to that too, as you're designing where you're going to go with this. I think it's a great point.
And leverage what you already have in store, the devices that you already are using, that your associates already have or are bringing to work, or in the case of the floor scrubbers, things that you're already running through the store. How do you make each one of those things smarter?
Yeah, it's a BYOD party if you're thinking about this the right way.
Yeah,
no matter what device you want to use,
that
whether
sounds
it's in
like
the hand.
fun.
It does. Let's have a BYOD party.
All right. I like it. Christian, thank you so much for joining us today. That was wonderful. If people didn't get a chance to ask you questions during the event today, they want to learn more about Scandit, about ShelfView, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yep. So one simple thing is just email to Christian@Scandit. That's very simple. Otherwise, contact me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Christian. That wraps us up. Thanks to Scandit CTO and co-founder Christian Floerkemeier for sitting down with us today. To all of you who have joined us live on LinkedIn. And as always, on behalf of Christian, on behalf of Chris and myself, please be careful out there.